Shaq froze. The package on his doorstep had no return address. Just 3 words. Open if you dare. His heart pounded as he tore it open. Inside was a USB drive labeled Project Olympus. The last time he found a USB like this, it nearly got him killed. But before he could react, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. You thought Phoenix was bad? This is bigger. Shaq inhaled sharply. He wasn't just in the game anymore. He was the target. What happens next will leave you speechless. Wait. Before we go any further, I gotta ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe. Shaquille O'Neal didn't believe in coincidences. Yet, as he walked home past a dimly lit park bench, a black leather briefcase sat there, perfectly placed, untouched. The air was cool, crisp, too quiet for a city that never truly slept. The faint buzz of streetlights overhead was the only sound. He slowed his steps. Something felt off. No one was around. No joggers, no late-night commuters, no stray cars rolling by. Just this abandoned briefcase, sitting like a forgotten secret. Shaq checked his phone. 1:37 a.m. Maybe someone left it behind? Maybe its owner would come sprinting back any second. He waited. 5 minutes, then 10, then 20. Nothing. His instincts said to walk away. But curiosity? That was another thing entirely. Taking a deep breath, he stepped closer. The briefcase was worn but expensive. Whoever owned it had money. Maybe even power. He tapped it lightly with his foot. No movement. No sound. Not a bomb, then. Carefully, he crouched down, gripping the cold leather handle. Expecting it to be locked, he braced himself to check for identification, but the top creaked open. Shaq froze. Inside, a stack of documents lay perfectly arranged. Not business papers, not financial reports. Government files. Some pages were stamped confidential in bold red ink. Others had lines of text completely blacked out, like someone didn't want the truth to be read. Shaq's fingers skimmed over the pages, his eyes scanning lists of names, dates, locations. None of it made sense, until he saw one word. Terminated. Written in capital letters next to certain names. His stomach tightened. This wasn't a mistake. This was a hit list. And then he noticed something taped to the inside flap of the folder. A small silver USB drive. Carefully placed. Hidden. His breath caught. Someone wanted this to stay undiscovered. Shaq hesitated. His fingers hovered over the drive before finally pulling it free. It was cool to the touch, almost ice cold. A sharp gust of wind rustled through the empty streets. His instincts screamed. Someone was watching. He turned his head slightly, scanning the shadows. Nothing. But still, that uneasy feeling crawled up his spine. What the hell had he just found? Clenching the USB drive in his palm, Shaq exhaled sharply. He had 2 choices: walk away or dig deeper. Either way, he knew this was just the beginning. Shaq sat at his desk, his fingers drumming against the edge of his laptop. The small USB drive felt unnaturally cold in his palm, as if it carried the weight of something more than just data. He had found it hidden inside the mysterious briefcase, abandoned, unclaimed, and now sitting in the corner of his apartment like a ghost waiting to be acknowledged. His gut told him this wasn't just an ordinary lost item. There was something off about it, something that sent a chill down his spine the moment he spotted it on that empty bench. But he had picked it up anyway. Curiosity had a way of getting him into situations he never asked for. Taking a deep breath, Shaq plugged the USB into his laptop. The screen flickered as the device registered, a folder popping open. Inside, several files appeared, most of them locked behind encryption. Only one document was accessible. Shaq hesitated for a second, his eyes narrowing. If this was just a forgotten flash drive, why were most of the files locked? His curiosity burned even stronger now. He clicked on the open document, and the screen filled with text. At first it looked like a simple list, names neatly arranged in columns, but as his eyes scanned further, something made his stomach twist. These weren't just any names. They were powerful names. Politicians, business moguls, high-ranking officials, people who shaped laws, controlled industries, and made the world move behind the scenes. Next to some of the names, one word stood out in bold, blood-red letters: terminated. Shaq's pulse quickened. What the hell was this? A hit list? A record of something sinister? His mind raced with possibilities, but before he could process the gravity of what he was seeing, a pop-up window interrupted his thoughts. Access denied. Restricted files require authentication. Of course, the other files were locked for a reason, but that meant there was more. Maybe something even worse. Determined to dig deeper, Shaq reached for his phone. He needed help, and there was only one person he trusted with something like this: Maya Carter. Maya was a cybersecurity expert, a hacker with skills sharp enough to break into systems that weren't meant to be touched. If anyone could crack this, it was her. Before he could dial her number, something strange happened. His laptop screen flickered. The document disappeared. The folder closed itself. Then, the entire screen went black. Shaq frowned, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He tapped a key. Nothing. He moved the mouse, still nothing. And then his phone vibrated. Unknown number. His throat tightened. His instincts screamed at him not to answer, but his fingers moved on their own. Slowly, he pressed the call button and lifted the phone to his ear. A low, distorted voice crackled through the speaker. "Walk away." Shaq stiffened. "You don't know what you found." Then, click. The call ended. His laptop screen flickered back on, rebooting as if nothing had happened. But Shaq knew better. Someone had just remotely accessed his device. Someone knew he had the USB. And now, they were watching him. Shaq swallowed hard, gripping the USB drive tighter. He needed to move. Now Shaq's instincts kicked in the moment he noticed the black SUV parked outside his house. The engine was still running. Headlights dimmed, almost as if the driver wanted to remain unnoticed. But Shaq noticed. He had spent years traveling the world, learning how to read a situation before it escalated. This wasn't normal. He took a slow breath, glancing at his laptop. The screen was still black, unresponsive after someone had remotely accessed it. The USB drive lay on his desk, and the classified-looking documents from the briefcase were still spread out in front of him. Was this connected? He had only started digging, but someone already knew. Then his phone rang. Shaq's fingers hovered over the device, tension stiffening his shoulders. The caller ID displayed an unknown number. His gut told him not to answer, but his curiosity burned hotter than his caution. He pressed the green button and brought the phone to his ear. "Walk away from this." The voice was low, nearly a whisper with an eerie calmness. Shaq narrowed his eyes, gripping the phone tighter. "Who is this?" A pause. Then, "You don't know what you've found, but if you keep pushing, you will." Shaq's jaw tightened. "Is that a threat?" Another pause. Then, the line went dead. Shaq pulled the phone away, staring at the screen. No trace of the call, no number to redial, just silence. He pushed back from his desk and moved toward the window. The SUV hadn't moved. He could barely make out the shape of a driver sitting inside. Were they watching his house? Or was this just a coincidence? Shaq wasn't the type to ignore his instincts. He stepped out onto his porch, making sure to move casually like he wasn't concerned. The moment he appeared, the SUV's engine revved. The tires screeched against the pavement as the vehicle peeled away into the night. That confirmed it. This wasn't paranoia. Someone was watching him. He hurried back inside, locking the door behind him. His mind raced through the events of the past hour. A briefcase left alone at a bus stop. A USB filled with classified documents. A list of powerful names, some marked as terminated. A laptop remotely shut down. And now, an anonymous warning and a car lurking outside his home. This wasn't random. He had stumbled onto something big. Shaq grabbed his phone and scrolled through his contacts. He needed help. Someone with the skills to crack open that USB drive without getting traced again. His thumb hovered over a name. Maya Carter. Maya was one of the best tech analysts he knew. A cybersecurity expert who had worked with journalists and whistleblowers in the past. If anyone could uncover what was on that drive, it was her. He hit the call button. After a few rings, she answered. "Shaq, what's up? It's late." "I need your help," Shaq said, cutting to the point. "And I need it now." Maya heard the urgency in his voice. "What happened?" "I found something. A briefcase. Files. A USB with encrypted data, and now someone's watching me." Maya was silent for a moment. Then, "You're not joking." "I wish I was," Shaq muttered. "Can you meet me?" "Yeah, my place. I'll set up my secure system," she said. "And Shaq? Don't bring your phone." Shaq frowned. "Why?" If they already hacked your laptop, your phone might be compromised too. He exhaled, running a hand over his head. Maya was right. He hadn't even thought of that. All right, I'm on my way. He shut down his phone and left it behind, grabbing only the briefcase and the USB. Before stepping out, he took one last glance around his home. A creeping sense of unease settled in his gut. Whoever was behind this, they weren't playing around. Shaq slipped into his car, gripping the wheel. He wasn't sure what he had gotten himself into, but one thing was clear. There was no turning back now. Before Shaq pulls out of his, driveway, his dashboard lights up. His car's security system detects movement. Someone was here. Shaq parked 2 blocks away from Maya Carter's apartment, stepping out into the dimly lit street. The night air was thick with tension, his senses sharper than usual. He had made sure he wasn't being followed, taking multiple turns and even switching lanes aggressively to see if anyone tailed him. So far, nothing, but he knew that didn't mean he was in the clear. With the briefcase clutched tightly in his hand, he jogged up the stairs to Maya's unit. She lived in a loft-style apartment above an old bookstore, the kind of place that didn't attract much attention. A perfect hideout for someone who specialized in uncovering secrets. He knocked once. The door cracked open an inch, revealing Maya's sharp brown eyes peering through. "You alone?" she asked. "Yeah," Shaq said, his voice low. She stepped aside, letting him in before locking the door behind him. The apartment was dim, lit mostly by the glow of multiple monitors spread across her desk. Screens flickered with lines of code, encrypted messages, and security feeds that only she could decipher. A half-eaten sandwich and a cup of cold coffee sat untouched beside her keyboard, a sign she had been working for hours. Shaq dropped the briefcase onto the table. "I need answers, Maya." Maya pushed her glasses up and gave him a wary look. "This the case you told me about?" He nodded. "And the USB. Someone shut down my laptop remotely the second I tried to open a file." She didn't waste time. She took the USB and inserted it into a secured offline system separate from the internet. A black screen flashed before filling with lines of jumbled text. Encrypted. Maya smirked. "Cute. Whoever did this thought they were clever." Shaq crossed his arms. "Can you crack it?" She rolled her eyes. "Please." Her fingers moved fast across the keyboard. Programs ran, decoding layers of security, peeling back digital walls built to keep people out. It took longer than expected, and Shaq could feel his patience wearing thin. Then a folder appeared on the screen. "Got it," Maya muttered, clicking into it. Inside were dozens of video files, documents, and surveillance images. But one file stood out, labeled Priority, in bold red letters. Maya clicked it open. A grainy surveillance video started playing. The timestamp showed it was from 3 days ago. The footage revealed a parking garage, dimly lit, mostly empty. A man in a suit stood near his car, glancing around nervously. Then, out of nowhere, a black SUV pulled up. 4 masked men jumped out, grabbing the man and shoving him into the vehicle. Shaq leaned in. "Who is he?" Maya fast-forwarded, zooming in on the man's face just before he was forced into the SUV. The clarity sharpened. Shaq's stomach dropped. "That's Ryan Keller," Maya whispered. "The journalist. Ryan Keller. An award-winning investigative reporter. The same guy who had been working on an exposé about government corruption for months. And now, he was missing." Shaq exhaled sharply. "That briefcase belonged to him." Maya nodded grimly. "And that means whatever's in these files got him taken." The air between them grew thick with realization. This wasn't just about some forgotten case. This was evidence, proof of something big. Maya clicked into another file, a list of names. Some were politicians, some were corporate CEOs, but a few were labeled with a chilling word beside them. Terminated. Shaq's pulse quickened. They're eliminating people. Maya clenched her jaw. And Keller was next. Just as she clicked into a third file, a red warning box flashed across her screen. Unauthorized access detected. What the hell? Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard. The system was shutting down. Then her phone buzzed. A single notification. "You have been located." Maya's face drained of color. "Shaq, they found us." He grabbed the briefcase, his instincts screaming at him to move. "We need to go." Now Maya ripped the USB from the port and shoved her laptop into a bag. Outside, The sound of tires screeching filled the air. Shaq rushed to the window and peeked through the blinds. A black SUV had just pulled up, the same SUV from his house. Maya's breathing was ragged. "We can't go out the front." Shaq looked around. "Back exit." She nodded toward a hallway. "Fire escape." They moved fast, slipping out onto the iron staircase just as the first loud bang hit the front door. Someone was trying to break in. Shaq grabbed Maya's hand and led her down the fire escape, his heart hammering. The second their feet hit the pavement, another set of headlights flashed at the end of the alley. Another car, another team. They were surrounded. Maya's voice trembled. "Shaq, we're trapped." Shaq's feet hit the pavement hard as he and Maya sprinted through the alleyway. Behind them, the sound of splintering wood echoed through the night. The men in black SUVs had broken into Maya's apartment. They weren't knocking. They were coming in fast. Maya clutched her laptop bag tightly, her breathing ragged. "We need to keep moving," she gasped. Shaq stole a glance over his shoulder. Two figures in tactical gear spilled out of the building, scanning the dark alley. Their silhouettes were backlit by the SUV's headlights. "Get in the car," Shaq ordered, pushing Maya toward her small black sedan parked at the curb. They jumped in, slamming the doors shut as Maya fumbled with the keys. The engine roared to life and she peeled out of the alley. Tires screeching. Shaq twisted in his seat. "They saw us. They're coming." Maya's hands gripped the wheel tightly. "We just need to lose them." The SUVs whipped around the corner, headlights flooding the street. Engines growled as they picked up speed, closing the distance. Shaq clenched his fists. "Punch it, Maya." Maya gritted her teeth and floored the accelerator. The speedometer needle jumped as they weaved through traffic, darting between cars. Horns blared. Pedestrians on the sidewalk turned in shock, but the SUVs stayed on their tail. Maya's fingers danced over the car's touchscreen, pulling up a navigation app. "I know a shortcut," she muttered. She took a hard right onto a narrow side street, barely missing a parked truck. The tires skidded as the car fishtailed before straightening. Shaq's knuckles turned white as he braced himself against the dashboard. This better work. Behind them, the SUVs tried to follow but struggled to squeeze through the tight turn. One clipped the side of a dumpster, scraping metal against metal. For a moment, it looked like they might have lost them. Then Maya's phone buzzed. A single notification flashed on the screen. "Tracking signal active." Her stomach dropped. "They're tracking us," she breathed. Shaq's eyes snapped to her. "What?" Maya's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the wheel. "They hacked into my car's GPS. They know exactly where we're going." Shaq exhaled sharply, thinking fast. "We need to ditch this car. Now." Maya nodded and took another sharp turn, heading toward an underground parking garage. She killed the lights as they entered, driving deep into the shadows. She parked between two large SUVs and shut off the engine. For a second, they just sat there, breathing hard. Shaq turned to her. "We switch cars. You know someone we can trust?" Maya nodded, pulling out her phone. "I have a guy. He's underground. Knows how to make things disappear." Shaq nodded. "Call him." Maya tapped the screen and a gruff voice answered on the first ring. "Yeah? It's me. I need a ride. Now." The man on the other end hesitated. "You in trouble?" "You could say that," Maya muttered. A sigh. Then, "I'll send you a location. Be there in 5. Maya ended the call, turning to Shaq. "We need to move." They stepped out of the car, leaving it behind. As they exited the garage on foot, Shaq kept scanning the streets, every nerve on high alert. The city pulsed around them. Blaring horns, the distant wail of sirens, neon signs flickering against the dark sky. But Shaq couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being watched. Maya checked her phone, following the directions to the meetup spot. They turned down a dimly lit alley where a black sedan idled. The driver, a burly man with a shaved head and thick beard, leaned against the car, arms crossed. "You're late," he muttered. Maya rolled her eyes. "Shut up and drive." They climbed into the sedan, and the driver pulled away smoothly, merging into the late-night traffic. Maya opened her laptop again, fingers moving fast. "Let's see what else we're dealing with." Shaq watched as she pulled up more decrypted files, her brows furrowing. Then she stopped, stared. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Shaq, this is bigger than we thought." Shaq leaned over. On the screen was a single word. "Phoenix." The deeper they dig, the more dangerous this becomes. Shaq stared at the name on the screen, his heart pounding in his chest. It didn't make sense. It couldn't be real. But there it was, highlighted in red, on a list of people labeled terminated. And right above that, a single chilling phrase, Phoenix Project, status, active. Maya sat frozen beside him, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Shaq, she whispered, her voice barely audible. This is bigger than we thought. The air in the car felt suffocating, the weight of what they had just uncovered pressing down on them. Shaq swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the screen. Among the names of high-profile journalists, whistleblowers, and government officials, one stood out, a name he knew personally, Coach Darnell Tate, his old college mentor, the man who had shaped his career, guided him through the toughest years of his life, the man he had trusted like a father. Shaq's grip tightened into a fist. There's no way, he muttered. Darnell's been dead for years. Car accident. Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard as she dug deeper into the files. Shaq. It wasn't an accident. A cold shiver ran down his spine. Maya clicked on a classified report buried deep in the database. It detailed an incident 6 years ago, Darnell Tate's fatal crash, but the official cause of death wasn't a car accident. It was marked as an authorized termination. Shaq inhaled sharply. They killed him. Maya nodded grimly. And he wasn't the only one. She scrolled further, revealing more names. Activists, reporters, even former military personnel. Every single one of them had tried to expose something before they mysteriously disappeared. And every file was linked to Phoenix. What the hell is the Phoenix Project? Shaq asked, his voice a mix of anger and disbelief. Maya's hands trembled as she clicked on the next document. A government seal flashed across the screen, followed by a heavily redacted briefing. But one sentence was still clear. The Phoenix Project is designed to eliminate threats to national security before they materialize. Shaq's jaw clenched. They're not protecting the country. They're silencing anyone who gets in their way. Maya's eyes darted across the screen, absorbing every detail. And it's still active. That means people are still being targeted. Shaq sat back, running a hand over his face. This wasn't just some political scandal. This was a hit list. And the worst part? They had just put themselves right in the middle of it. Before he could speak, Maya's laptop let out a shrill beep. She flinched. What was that? Shaq leaned in, his pulse racing. A new window had appeared on the screen. The words unauthorized access. Detected flashed in bold red letters. Maya's face went pale. Oh no. They know we're in the system. The realization hit Shaq like a freight train. Whoever was behind Phoenix had just found them. Maya's fingers flew over the keyboard, trying to cut the connection. I need to shut it down before they... Bang! A loud noise erupted from outside, making them both jump. Shaq whipped his head around, peering through the tinted car windows. A black SUV screeched to a halt a few yards away. Its headlights glared like eyes locked onto them. Maya's voice was frantic. Shaq, we need to move. Now the Phoenix Project wasn't just a cover-up, it was still hunting. And now Shaq and Maya were its newest targets. Shaq exhaled slowly, his massive hands gripping the steering wheel as he sat in the darkened alley, watching the glow of Maya's laptop illuminate her face. They had been running for too long, dodging black SUVs, wiping their digital footprints and staying one step ahead. But now it was time to turn the game around. We're not running anymore, Shaq muttered. Maya glanced at him, her fingers still flying across the keyboard. So what's the plan? Because I'm telling you right now, whoever's behind this isn't playing games. Shaq nodded. Neither am I. He leaned forward, scanning the decrypted files again. The Phoenix Project was bigger than they imagined. It wasn't just about silencing whistleblowers. It was a carefully orchestrated operation to remove threats before they could expose corruption. And the worst part? Some of the most powerful people in the country were involved. We need to make them come to us, Shaq said finally. Maya frowned. That's insane. We barely made it out alive last time. You want to invite them to finish the job? Shaq smirked. I want them to think they're finishing the job. Over the next few hours, they carefully planted the bait. Maya leaked just enough information to set off alarms within the Phoenix Project's network. A few redacted pages, a couple of names that hinted at deeper files, and one encrypted video clip that ended before revealing anything crucial. "This is like chumming the water for sharks," Maya murmured, watching her code flood the dark web. "Exactly," Shaq said, cracking his knuckles. "And now we wait." It didn't take long. Within minutes, notifications began popping up on Maya's screen. IP pings from high-security locations, encrypted messages bouncing between government servers, and then a private message. "Unknown sender. We need to meet. Tonight. Alone." Shaq and Maya exchanged a glance. "They took the bait," she whispered. Shaq arrived at the meeting location, a deserted shipping yard on the outskirts of the city. The air smelled of rust and salt from the docks, the quiet hum of the city far behind him. He adjusted his earpiece, Maya's voice crackling softly. "Stay sharp, Shaq. I'm monitoring everything." He stepped forward, scanning the empty lot. A single streetlight flickered above. Then footsteps echoed from the shadows. A man in a long trench coat emerged, his face hidden under a hood. "You've been making a lot of noise," the man said, his voice calm but dangerous. Shaq crossed his arms. "You don't scare me." The man chuckled. "Oh, we don't need to scare you, Mr. O'Neill. We just need to—" Sirens. Red and blue lights. FBI swarming the area. Shaq's heart dropped as SUVs screeched into the lot, agents pouring out with weapons drawn. "Shaquille O'Neal," a commanding voice boomed. "Step away from the suspect. Hands where we can see them." Shaq turned slowly, fists clenching. "Maya," he murmured into the mic. "What the hell is happening?" But the earpiece was silent. That's when he knew. Someone had sold him out. Shaq realizes too late. This wasn't just a trap for the Phoenix Project. Someone close to him had turned on him. And now, he was the one being hunted. Shaq barely had time to react before hands gripped his arms, yanking them behind his back. Cold metal cuffs snapped around his wrists. The flashing red and blue lights made his head spin as armed FBI agents surrounded him, their weapons drawn like he was some kind of fugitive. "Shaquille O'Neal," a voice boomed over the chaos. "You are under arrest for possession of classified government property. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Shaq clenched his jaw, his mind racing. This wasn't just a simple arrest. This was a setup. Somewhere in the distance, he heard tires screech. Maya. She had gotten away. Good. If she was out there, that meant this wasn't over. It meant she still had a chance to expose the truth. "Where's the girl?" One agent barked into his radio. "She's gone, sir. Slipped out before we locked down the area." The lead agent cursed under his breath. "Get the intel off his person. Check for drives, hidden tech, anything." Shaq didn't resist as they patted him down, searching for the USB drive. He smirked. They weren't going to find anything. Maya had the files now. "Where's the briefcase?" another agent demanded. Shaq stared him down, refusing to answer. One of them shoved him forward. "Move." They forced him into the back of an unmarked black SUV, and as the doors slammed shut, Shaq took a deep breath. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The room was cold, dimly lit, with nothing but a steel table and a single chair in the center. Shaq sat, his wrists still cuffed, watching the large mirror on the wall. He knew someone was watching from the other side. The door creaked open. A man in a dark suit walked in, carrying a thick file. He moved slowly, deliberately, as if he had all the time in the world. He placed the file on the table and finally met Shaq's gaze. "I warned you," the man said, shaking his head. Shaq's body tensed. That voice. He had heard it before. The mysterious caller. Shaq leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "So you're the coward hiding behind the phone." The man chuckled, flipping open the file. "And you're the fool who didn't listen." Shaq watched as the man pulled out a photo, blurry surveillance footage of him and Maya at the hacker's hideout. "Let's cut to the chase," the man continued. "You're in possession of classified documents that were never meant to see the light of day." Shaq smirked. "You mean the ones exposing government-sanctioned murder?" "Yeah, those." The man's expression didn't change. He tapped the file. "You don't understand what you've walked into, Mr. O'Neill. This isn't some street-level conspiracy. This is national security. You think leaking a few documents will change anything? You're wrong." Shaq tilted his head. "So what now? You make me disappear like the others on that list?" The man leaned in. "Not if you cooperate." Shaq narrowed his eyes. And if I don't? The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then you just became the biggest problem we've ever had. Before Shaq could respond, the door swung open again. Another agent hurried inside, whispering something into the man's ear. His expression darkened. Something was happening. Shaq watches as the man's face shifts from smug confidence to barely concealed panic. Something outside that room had changed, and Shaq knew it wasn't over yet. The room was suffocatingly silent. The dim overhead light flickered slightly, casting shadows over the cold steel table between Shaq and the man who had set him up. His name was Agent Cole, a high-ranking intelligence officer, and the smirk on his face made it clear. He thought he had already won. "You should have listened, big guy," Cole said, his voice smooth, controlled. He leaned back in his chair, hands folded casually over the file in front of him. Shaq, still cuffed, sat across from him, shoulders squared. His jaw tightened, but he stayed silent, waiting. He had faced opponents before, on and off the court, and if there was one thing he had learned, it was that patience was a weapon. Cole finally opened the file, sliding a few documents toward Shaq. "You recognize these?" Shaq's eyes flicked down. It was a printout of some of the classified files from the USB. One word stood out immediately: Phoenix Project. Cole watched his reaction, then continued. "The briefcase you so conveniently stumbled upon contained evidence tied to an operation you were never supposed to know about. Phoenix was, our little secret." Shaq met his gaze. "Phoenix Project, sounds serious. What is it?" Cole chuckled. "Let's just say, national security at its highest level. And you're interfering in things far bigger than yourself." Shaq sat back, his mind racing. He had suspected the documents were important, but now, hearing it from Cole himself, he realized he had barely scratched the surface. If Phoenix was this classified, it meant lives had been taken to keep it hidden. Cole sighed, feigning disappointment. "Look, Shaq, here's the deal. You walk away. Forget about the briefcase. Forget about Phoenix. Forget everything you and your little hacker friend dug up." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Do that, and you go home. No charges, no accidents. You keep your name clean. Your life stays intact." Shaq's fists clenched. He knew exactly what this was. A bribe wrapped in a threat. Walk away, or suffer the consequences. His response was immediate. "I don't take orders from corrupt cowards." Cole's smirk disappeared. His jaw tensed, and for the first time, a flicker of irritation crossed his face. He exhaled through his nose, nodding slightly as if he expected this answer but didn't like it. "You think you're making some noble stand?" Cole muttered. "That you're going to expose some grand conspiracy and walk away the hero?" He shook his head. "You're not a hero, Shaq. You're just a guy who stumbled into something he shouldn't have. And now, you just signed your own death warrant." Shaq held his stare, unflinching. "You think I'm scared of you?" Cole smirked again, but this time there was no amusement behind it. "No, I don't. But maybe you should be." Before Shaq could respond, the room shook. A low, rumbling vibration rolled through the walls. The fluorescent lights above flickered violently before plunging the entire room into darkness. Then alarms blared. Cole's smirk vanished as a red emergency light flickered on. A guard burst into the room, breathless. "Sir, we have a breach." Shaq's lips curled into a grin. Whatever was happening outside, he knew one thing. It wasn't over yet. The sirens blared through the FBI facility, casting an eerie red glow across the interrogation room as the emergency lights flickered. The air was thick with tension, and for the first time since their confrontation began, Cole's confidence wavered. A breathless guard rushed into the room, his uniform slightly disheveled. "Sir, we have a breach," he gasped. Cole turned sharply, his fingers tightening on the edge of the metal table. "What kind of breach?" The guard hesitated, swallowing hard. "Cyber attack, sir. Our entire system is compromised." Shaq, still handcuffed to the chair, watched the scene unfold with growing satisfaction. He didn't know exactly what was happening, but he had a pretty good idea who was behind it. Cole yanked out his phone, his eyes scanning the screen. A series of frantic messages flooded his encrypted app. Phoenix files leaked. National news outlets reporting control slipping. Then another notification popped up. "Do not contact us. Operation burned." Cole's jaw clenched. His own agency had just cut him off. Shaq leaned forward, smirking. "Something wrong, Cole?" Cole's nostrils flared as he slammed his phone on the table, glaring at Shaq. You have no idea what you just started. Shaq shrugged. Maybe not, but I know how it's gonna end. Outside the room, chaos erupted. Agents sprinted through hallways, trying to contain the digital wildfire that had been unleashed. Screens across the FBI headquarters displayed breaking news reports, exposing Phoenix Project to the world. Leaked documents reveal secret government operations involving illegal human experiments. Whistleblowers eliminated to cover up corruption, names of officials linked to the scandal. FBI caught in classified leak. Who is responsible? Maya had done it. From her hidden location, she had infiltrated the FBI's most secure database, pulled out the most damning evidence, and broadcasted it to every major media outlet. There was no coming back from this. Inside the interrogation room, Cole's phone vibrated again. This time, it was the FBI director. His face darkened as he listened. Then, without another word, he stood up and walked to the door, motioning for the guard. Release him. The guard hesitated. Sir? Now! Cole snapped. The next moment, the handcuffs clicked open, and Shaq rubbed his wrists as he slowly stood. He towered over Cole, staring him down as the agent seethed in frustration. You win this round, Cole said through gritted teeth. Shaq smiled. I tend to do that. Cole's gaze darkened. But trust me, this isn't over. As Shaq walked out of the building, his phone buzzed. A new message appeared on the screen. Unknown number. You think this ends here? You're wrong. Shaq narrowed his eyes. Someone else was still out there. The real fight was just beginning. The air outside the FBI facility was thick with tension. Shaq stepped onto the pave, inhaling deeply, trying to ground himself after the chaos inside. The cool night air did little to soothe the storm brewing inside him. Maya was already there, leaning against a black sedan, her eyes glued to her phone. She barely looked up as Shaq approached. It worked, she said, voice steady but tinged with something else. Unease. The leak is everywhere. The world knows about Phoenix now. Shaq nodded, but his gut told him something was off. Then why don't you look happy? Maya finally met his gaze, then turned her screen toward him. A news alert flashed in bold red letters. Breaking. FBI agent Cole under investigation for involvement in Phoenix Project, now missing. Shaq's eyes narrowed. Missing? Maya nodded. He disappeared, Shaq. No arrest, no charges, just gone. Shaq exhaled, rubbing his jaw. And the other officials? Maya's fingers danced over her keyboard. Most of them have gone dark. Flights booked under fake names, offshore accounts drained, last known locations scrubbed. They knew this was coming. They're running. Shaq clenched his fists. Cowards. Maya sighed. It gets worse. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small black flash drive, the same one Shaq had found inside the briefcase. Before I leaked everything, I decrypted the final file. I almost didn't look, but she hesitated, then handed it to him. You need to see this. Shaq plugged the drive into his phone, watching as the screen loaded a new set of documents. Lines of classified text scrolled by. Names, operations, hidden locations. But one word stood out, glaring at him like a neon sign in the dark. Project Olympus. Shaq's breath hitched. Olympus? Maya nodded, her face grim. Phoenix wasn't the only project, Shaq. It was just the beginning. There's another operation, bigger, more dangerous, and it's still active. Shaq exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of what they had uncovered pressed down on his chest. They had exposed a monster, but now they were staring at its bigger, more sinister shadow. This was just the beginning, he muttered. Maya looked at him, her expression unreadable. It looks like it. A tense silence hung between them as the realization sank in. The people behind Phoenix hadn't been fully exposed. Some had gone into hiding, but others, they were still out there. And Olympus? It sounded like something much, much worse. Maya scrolled through the decrypted files again. Shaq, listen to this. Project Olympus, Phase 1. Global initiation. She swallowed hard. This isn't just an experiment, it's an operation, and it's already in motion. Shaq clenched his jaw. We need to find out what it is, and fast. Before Maya could respond, Shaq's phone buzzed in his pocket. His eyes flicked to the screen. Unknown number, Chi. A chill ran down his spine. Slowly he answered. A low, distorted voice crackled through the line. You should have walked away when you had the chance. Shaq's grip tightened on the phone. Who is this? A slow exhale on the other end. Then a single sentence that sent ice through his veins. Olympus is watching you. The call disconnected. Maya stared at him, her expression tense. Shaq? What did they say? He lowered the phone, his pulse hammering. They said Olympus is watching. As Shaq processed the chilling message, a black SUV rolled past them, its tinted windows concealing whoever was inside. It didn't stop. It didn't slow down. But Shaq knew they weren't just watching. They were already making their move. The night was eerily quiet as Shaq pulled into his driveway. The weight of everything that had happened sat heavy on his shoulders. The Phoenix Project was exposed. Cole had vanished, and high-ranking officials were scrambling for cover. But despite it all, Shaq couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. As he stepped out of his car, he noticed something unusual. Sitting on his doorstep was a small unmarked package. No return address, no postage, just a plain brown box, perfectly placed in the center of his porch. His gut twisted. Maya pulled up behind him and got out of her car, immediately noticing the package. Shaq, you expecting something? No. They exchanged a wary glance before Shaq bent down and carefully picked it up. It was light, but something shifted inside as he turned it in his hands. He took it inside, placing it on the kitchen counter while Maya locked the door behind them. The moment felt too familiar. The briefcase, the USB, the chase. Every time he thought he was ahead, another layer of the mystery unraveled. Shaq exhaled sharply and grabbed a knife from the drawer, slicing through the tape. Inside was a single item, a small black USB drive. Unlike the first one, this one had a label. Maya stiffened. Shaq. This wasn't over Phoenix. She reached inside the box and pulled out a folded note tucked underneath the USB. Her fingers trembled as she read the message aloud. We were never after Phoenix. Olympus is the real target. The words sent a cold,